Today we are going to change the oil along with the oil filter. We're also going to change the fuel filter and do a little lubrication on a 2004 Dodge diesel Cummins truck. It's the 2500, but the 3500 is going to be the same, and probably anything from about 2002 or 3 on through 2006. Anything with that 5.9 liter I6, this should work just fine for. You're going to need 12 quarts of oil. You're going to need an oil filter. This bag is to help us change that oil filter a little more cleanly. This is going to allow us to remove the plug from the drain, from the oil pan under the engine, and this may be needed to remove the old oil filter. Remember, do not use an oil filter wrench to tighten it on. That's done by hand only, but you may need it to remove it. We're going to have some gloves to kind of help try to keep things clean. Obviously, we need somewhere to drain the oil into, and this one is handy because it allows us to take it over to one of the places where we can dispose of it, like an AutoZone or an O'Reilly's or wherever you like to frequent. We're going to change the fuel filter, as I mentioned. So here's our fuel filter, and here's the wrench that we need, or the socket that we need to open that fuel filter can up. We're going to need some rags, again, to help keep clean. Over here is our lubrication device, and to protect our eyes from any oil or anything like that, or fuel or whatever, we're going to wear safety glasses. And to protect my shiny old dome, I'm going to put on my raggedy old hat. So let's get started. Some people say that you should have the engine hot and let it drain down. Some say let it sit all night. You know, it just depends on what you like. But either way, it's a good idea to go ahead and remove the cap. This one's on there good and tight. I should have removed it first to make it look easy. Anyway, remove the cap so that air can flow in there. It's going to let the oil drain out better. If you're using this type of oil catch basin, first you want to make sure this is open so the air can escape, and also that this is open so the oil goes down into it. So you just take a 3/8 inch drive, stick it in there. Remember, lefty loosey. So let's see, lefty would be that way, and so we're able to take this off like that. Now I'm using nitrile gloves because I don't like getting my hands all dirty when I do this. So we've double checked to make sure that's open, and off we go. Some people just let it drop right into the pan, and that's okay. While the oil is draining, we will remove the old oil filter, and we'll also change the fuel filter and lube the tie rods too. The oil filter is located by the side of the engine on the passenger side towards the front. You can see the top of it right here. But to access it, we're going to go underneath the truck and look at it from the bottom. Perhaps the best way to get to it is to come in from the front of the truck. Again, we're still on the passenger side, obviously, because the filter hasn't moved. Until your head's about even with the front axle, and there you can see the oil filter right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of loosen it a little bit. Now I have to be honest with you, I pre-loosened it some, but I'm not ready to take it off yet because it's going to be an oily mess if I do. And that's where that plastic bag I talked about earlier comes in. I'm going to put that plastic bag around it, make sure I get one with no holes or anything in it. Put the plastic bag around it and drop it down. Using our plastic bag method that I was talking about, it did come out nice and clean. There's a little oil on the inside, which you would expect. That's the whole purpose. Now what we want to check is to make sure that that rubber washer that is part of it. The O-ring came off too, which it did. You can see that it's right here. We didn't want that left up in the motor, so it's important that comes off. Our fuel filter is right down here inside this can that you see right here. First thing we need to do is make sure we remove this yellow, or open this yellow line. And of course we need to have a catch basin underneath because we're actually draining fuel out. I do have a catch thing down there to catch the fuel as it goes out. So I'm going to open it up and let it drain for a few minutes. Once that's all drained out, what you're going to do is you're going to put a 1 1/8 inch socket right here on the cap of this, and then loosen that up. See if I can do it without falling down here. I keep bumping into the camera, so I'm going to have to shut the camera down, but that's where you go. It's hard to get the camera and your hand and the wrench all in there at the same time. It's a bit of a wiggle to get this out, but you know, you have to move a few things around, but it's not that bad. Now remember, you're liable to have some fuel dripping off of there as it comes out. So out it comes and it's ready, and then it's you just snap it out of that position, set it aside for now. And the other thing that's important is there is an O-ring. You can hardly see it because it's black on black. There's an O-ring that needs to come off too, because there is a new one in the box when you open it up. Get that O-ring off of there. Okay. Normally I might go to a more convenient place to do this, but since the camera's where it is, I'm going to work right here. Put the new O-ring on. Put the new O-ring on here, and it's not very hard. Snap that in. This has got to be the open end here because it's got to go down over that tube, and then we just insert it back in there and screw it back in. Alright, so once we've got that nice and tight like we want it, then we want to make sure that we reach down there and close that yellow valve. I don't know if we can even see it in the camera, but do not leave that baby open. And there we go. I've got that closed and we're ready to go. I promised you that we would lube this. Well, lubing these trucks is pretty darn easy because there's very little to do. To lube your tie rods, you're going to go inside underneath the front wheels, right up there next to the brake drums. You'll see the little area where the zerts are. You've got one of these zerts on each side. You're going to go in and you're going to clean off the zert so you can hook your lube connection to it. Hook up your lube connection, make sure it snaps on, and pump some in there. Now you want to pump it kind of slow and watch for any sign that you're getting in there. Oh, okay, so you can't see it from the camera angle, but I saw a little teeny bit of swelling and squirting up at the top, and that's really all I need. I don't want to get crazy with it. So I'm going to disconnect this and do the other side. We're about ready to put the new oil filter on. And before we put it on, we want to have it all 2/3 to half full of oil. You have to give it a little while, so there'll be some breaks here while the oil filters through the system. So that looks pretty good, and I think the next thing, of course, is you always want to put a little bit of oil on the O-ring itself. Now this rag is to wipe off where I took the oil, the old oil filter off because I want to have that clean around there too. All right, we've given it plenty of time to drain while we were doing the fluid. Wipe this off. All I'm really doing is smearing the used oil around on it, but it makes it look blacker and nicer. Which, by the way, one of the reasons that I do it myself rather than have it done commercially is simply because they're not going to give it enough time to drain properly. So, and I am. So you want it somewhat tight, but not so crazy tight that when you go to take it out, next time you want to change the oil, you've got to get a pry bar or something to get it off, and you don't want that. The plug has been put back into the oil pan, and the oil filter has been put back on after cleaning where it goes on and oiling the O-ring washer that goes on there. So now, obviously, we can go ahead and put the oil back in. All right, I've got all the oil in there, I believe, and so I'm going to put the cap back on. You might think we're ready to go, but there are at least a couple things that still need to be taken care of before we start running this engine. Well, I said there were a couple things left to do, and one is a mental checklist of everything we've done. So we drained the oil. We also removed the oil filter, drained it out, and let it all drain real good. Now, if you take it to a commercial place, it's going to drain for about 5 minutes or so. That's one of the reasons I like to do it myself, besides hopefully saving a little bit of money. We also drained the fuel filter and replaced with a new fuel filter and a new oil O-ring, a new O-ring. When we put the new oil filter on, speaking of filters, we made sure we oiled the top, and we put it only hand tight. You go up until you feel that it's starting to connect, and then you turn it 3/4 of a turn more. Then we did a quick little lube job. There's only 2 zerts to lube, so we got that done. Now there's one other thing we have to do, and that is refill the fuel filter can. And you don't do that by trying to start the engine. You do that by turning it into the on position, listening to that fuel pump, and making sure that it gets filled up. They say to do that at least 6 times before you try cranking the engine. Remember, we also check to make sure that that yellow valve was closed so that we don't have fuel leaking back out as we fill that oil can. So we're going to try for number 1 here. All right, so that's the 6th time. So now I'm going to go ahead and try to start it. And if it starts up, then I'm going to let it run for a few seconds. Turn it back off, get out, check for any leaks, anything I forgot to do, and then take the old oil over to the recycling station. So thanks for watching, and good luck on your efforts.